welcome back to Be My Guest. Joining me on the line right now is Steve Tasker, former Buffalo Bills player, now a broadcaster. And it was during the Super Bowl broadcast when the lights went out, Steve Tasker was thrown into the unusual role of basically having to carry the broadcast at that point because of everything that happened. Steve, can you take us back to when it happened and basically, you know, what they asked you to do, because it was almost like you became the voice or the announcer on spot?
Well, what happened was, obviously, when the lights went out, we lost a lot of power to a lot of our systems that were broadcasting the game. A lot of the cameras went out. The broadcast booth where Jim Nance, Bill Sims were broadcasting the game went completely dead, and we had some systems working, but we didn't know exactly which ones. And the problem was that not only were Phil and Jim out of touch, they couldn't hear or see anything, and the truck couldn't hear or see them either. The truck could hear myself, and they could hear Solomon Wilcox, but we could not hear them. So we didn't know whether we were all alone or all the power to all our systems had gone out or whatever. The truck knew that. Now, one of the lucky strokes, or actually one of the good moves that CBS made, we use hardwired mics for our football games on the sidelines. And now, while our wireless earpieces went dead because of the routers were on the systems that went dead, our hardwire mics worked, and so the truck could hear us, myself and Solomon Wilcox, but we could not hear the truck. My A2, my audio guy, had a hardwired IFB. He goes, "You can hear the truck, right?" And I said, "No, I can't hear anything." So he gave me his, and I put it on, and then from that moment on, I could hear the truck. The problem was, we were only in a 2-minute commercial break, and it took about a minute and a half for that to take place. So we had about 20 seconds before we came back on the air, before the producer, Lance Barrow, knew he had at least somebody who he could have announce and see what happened, and it turned out to be me.
How much actual reporting were you able to do during that time to just gather information so when they went to you, you'd have some information to impart to the audience?
Well, not very much. We couldn't do really anything. Absolutely nobody would come on camera with us from the NFL. Obviously, the coaches and players, there was a little bit of a taboo for them to even consider it, because Jim Harbaugh did not want to come over and talk to me. And none of the guys in the middle of the field, the NFL officials, wanted to do that either. Plus, it's not like I could go up and just stick the microphone in their face and say, "Hey, what's going on?" because we didn't have a camera that would follow me out there. And secondly, because we were on hardwire mics, the cord wouldn't reach to where they were standing, so they were in an island of unreachability. So during commercial breaks, I could take off the IFB and get them wired and run out there and get a few things and talk to them a little bit, and they'd give me something. Then I'd have to run back to the microphone and hook up with Lance, tell him what I had, and see if he thought it was worthy to go on the air.
You've played in Super Bowls, you know, as a player with the Bills. What was this experience like? Because I could use the word surreal, because it was so unusual, and all of a sudden you're thrust into this situation. So how was that experience different or comparable in any way to what a player goes through in the Super Bowl?
Well, I don't think even the players were ready for that, although they're trained for it. I mean, you go to practice and you sit around for a little bit, then you play and you practice and you compete really hard, and then you sit down for a while. So the players, I think, were okay with it. Plus, you know, they had things they could talk about and do that were pertinent to the game. For me, broadcasting a game like that, you know, it's unfortunate because it turned out to be a good game. Whether it was because of the lights going out or not, I don't know. But the Niners came back and got in it, and I think it would have been nice if that was the reason that the Super Bowl was remembered and not the fact that the lights went out. But I don't think that's going to be the case.
How much either text, emails, phone calls did you get from people asking you about it?
My phone lit up. Yeah, I mean, it's against, you know, CBS doesn't want us to tweet or anything during the broadcast, but after it was all over and we were well into the game, I had a family member. He texted me, and you know, everybody was really excited for what they thought was a great opportunity for me, or they were proud of me because I handled it or had to go on, and I was the only guy left standing. But my son said, "Hey, Dad, you got to tweet something. You're trending higher than Beyonce and Ray Lewis."
I think it's interesting because, you know, in any one particular situation, anybody can be put in that role. and you're either going to elevate who you are, or you'll crash or crumble under the pressure of it all. And I think your profile now rose significantly because you did what you had to do. It didn't look like you were stressed. You're trying to do your job. Do you feel like if there was a moment when you've now made it as a broadcaster, that was it? Or would you prefer to look at the body of your work, what you do week to week, and over the course of a few seasons to say, it's not about one situation, it's about the work I do overall as a broadcaster?
Well, I don't know. That's a good question. I don't really step back and look at myself. I do, these days I do consider myself a broadcaster, not a former player, although that's what I am, and that's the reason I'm a broadcaster, is the fact that I played. But I've been broadcasting longer than I played, and it's something that you don't prepare for, but the job you do prepares you for it, and that's, I think, the situation I found myself in. Plus, I think, for me, I know that the guys, the crew that I was working with, the number one crew at CBS, nobody would have been more prepared to do that game than they were, and I was the beneficiary of it.
When you were talking before, you mentioned about the mics and the particular mics that you're using and the whole, like, the technical side of it. Have you come to appreciate that whole side? Because people watch the game, they don't realize how much is going on with the production, direction, this and that. You just gave us a very small snippet of what's involved, and yet that's a huge, huge part of what happened in the game the other day.
Yeah, it is, and in fact, Armin Katayan, another CBS guy, was doing a 60-minute sports piece that came out very well, and he showed on Showtime about behind-the-scenes things that happened. They had cameras in the truck when the lights went out. They had you could hear what was going on, and you could hear a little bit of chaos in the beginning, and then you saw the professionalism of Lance Barrow and Mike Arnold and the rest of the crew take over, and we got through a situation that it could have been catastrophic for everybody watching the game, certainly, and of course the guys working the game. But we made it into just a bump in the road, and I think that's the brilliance of it. And while we were with all the people who said we want more information, we really were trying to get more information to give to people, and in a lot of ways there just wasn't any more to give, and we were getting shut out by the people who could give it. So I think under the circumstances we did an outstanding job, particularly the guys in the truck and the production side of it.
Have you had a chance to look back on the tape of the game to just sort of look at yourself or look at how the whole situation unfolded? Because I guess there's times when after a broadcast maybe you guys will do like a post-mortem, just look at what went right, what didn't go right, and look at try to learn from that. So have you had a chance to look at it?
Yeah, I went back and looked at it because I couldn't remember what I was saying. There was no rehearsal. I didn't get a chance to run through and think about what I was going to say. Usually, if you're going to do something like that, particularly with an audience in a show that big, you're going to be rehearsed and well thought out, and you're going to know exactly what you want to say. And I had less than 30 seconds to get ready for that first coming out of that first commercial break after the power outage. So there was really no time to rehearse. So I had no idea how it came off or how it sounded. So I did go back and listen to it to see how I did. And I guess like everything, and when it's live television, you don't get a run through. I'd love to have another shot at it to do a better job, but you don't get those opportunities when you're in live television.
Yeah, not to be too dramatic, but when certain situations happen in life, a shooting or whatever it is, something that's catastrophic, and we're not going to call this catastrophic, you look at the reporters and see they're having to scramble on their feet to tell the stories. As you said, you're not necessarily prepared for something like that. You have to adjust on the fly. So again, when you looked at it, do you now sort of even see it from another perspective when reporters are thrust into a situation because something dramatic has happened, news, say, for example, and they're having to just basically give a report on the scene without being prepared or not having a lot of information?
Well, it's the most difficult thing to do, I think, because there are a couple of things. You don't want to speculate. You don't want to say anything that is flat out wrong. But you want to observe and draw conclusions from what you observe and couch everything you say with those words, that it's only observations, it's what you've seen, what you've heard, what you've experienced, and you make sure you say everything as clearly as possible and you put out, first and foremost, the limitations you have with knowing what's fact and what is not fact. So once you can do that, I think you're pretty much there to tell the story, and particularly in the Super Bowl case, you're there to tell the story. And you do that as best you can with the facts you have, and everything that's not a fact, you kind of make sure people know it's not a fact, but you have reasons for saying it. And once you do that, I think you cover all your bases, and you kind of take what you get and go with what and do the best you can.
You know, I just mentioned to you off air the whole thing with the Saturday Night Live parody. Now, here in Canada, we haven't been able to see it. Just, I don't know, there's some sort of a filter or a firewall or something like that. But have you had a chance to actually look at it? And does that sort of tell you something about the magnitude of that moment that Saturday Night Live would pounce on it and make a skit about it?
Yeah, I mean, I think it dawned on me how big the moment was about 5 minutes after the lights came back on, and I could feel the relief and the you know, the exhilaration of having done something, gotten through something that you didn't know was coming, and you didn't completely blow it. But the Saturday Night Live thing, you know, once again, my phone started lighting up as soon as it came on. All my friends and some family members, some old college buddies, they all think, you know, they all think it's pretty cool. I mean, it is in our country, in our culture, it's a little bit of a cultural stepping stone, milestone to be parodied on Saturday Night Live. Not too many people have it happen, and to be one of those people, I think you have to, you know, it gives you an idea of how big the moment was. And it was a good. I thought it was a good skit, and I appreciated it. So I didn't have a problem with it, and I think it does speak to how big that moment was.
Well, Steve, thanks for joining us today. I know you got to get going. I think you did a wonderful job in a very unusual moment, and if people don't know who Steve Tasker was as a football player, then they weren't watching football. If they don't know who you are as a broadcaster, then they certainly know who you are now just because of that moment in time. It was a unique moment in history. So thanks a lot for joining us, Steve, and congratulations. I think you did a wonderful job under the circumstances.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Steve Tasker, former Buffalo Bills football player.